All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to this new, hopefully weekly show. And this week in JRPGs, we are talking about Chrono Trigger's 30th anniversary, when you can play the Atelier Yumia demo and some updated sales numbers for Final Fantasy 16 that are not good. But first of all, I want to introduce you to my buddy Jack over here. Jack, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, buddy. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so for anybody that may not know who Jack is, he's actually contributed to the channel a few times already. So he did reviews on the channel for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth last year, recently did a review for Trails Through Daybreak 2. And then when my voice was sounding like a garbled dog, you had done the VO for like the 2025 JRPG preview. And that video is almost at like 100,000 views. So once again, thanks for filling in on that one.
Look, Mom, I'm famous.
Yeah, and then just as the reviews and as the games start coming in, fast and furiously, Jack will be definitely helping out with more reviews and then doing on, coming on the show. And for anyone that I don't think anybody's familiar with your gaming history, but like, tell us about like how long have you been playing JRPGs? Do you have any favorites? Like, what's your history with JRPGs?
Yeah, I've been playing games and JRPGs pretty much my whole life. I remember when I was like 3 or 4 and I got an NES and I rented a game from the store that looked interesting to like 4-year-old me's brain, and it was called Final Fantasy. Now, I did not understand how to play the game. I got into the world map, got into the first combat encounter, and I won. And then the game froze at the victory screen, and I just told my parents, I was like, I beat the game. Like, look, it's finished. I did the fight, and now I won, and like I don't know what to do now.
Can you imagine, like, yeah, just one random battle, game's over. That's awesome.
And I mean, that was also, it was kind of new to my family. It wasn't like things like RPGs and even home consoles were not really part of the mainstream culture yet. It was still fairly new. So like my parents didn't know any better either. They were like, huh, that was a lot of money for not a lot, not a lot of babysitting time. But I got back into RPGs in elementary school. We had a Super Nintendo, and the first RPG that I remember playing was Final Fantasy 3 at the time, which was Final Fantasy 6. And that was, what a wild ride for, like a 10-year-old. And as you're going through this whole thing and in this epic story.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I've been hooked, and I don't put them down.
Nice. Do you have any like favorites? I know a lot of people don't like to have one specific favorite, but if what comes to mind when you think of like maybe top 5 JRPGs, if you had to rattle some off?
Well, I mean, of course, Final Fantasy 6, Chrono Trigger are very high on the list. I tend to rate JRPGs based on the impact that they have. And so I was really, really heavily impacted by Persona 5 Royal, which I remember you said you didn't get to actually experience the third semester, right?
Yeah, because I beat OG when it came out, and then
Yeah.
Royal came out, and I played it again on Switch, and I was like so excited. I'm like, oh, there's Kasumi, and there's all this new stuff,
Yeah.
and then I beat the game, and I'm like, where's that third semester? And turns out you have to get the social link up with like the psychologist guy at the school. I forget his name, but I just totally ignored him basically. I'm like, oh, oops. So yeah.
Yeah. I was really affected by that one. That was a big one. Final Fantasy 9, like the ending of Final Fantasy 9, I remember it felt like so sad to me to say goodbye to like these friends that I had made throughout this whole journey, right? Final Fantasy 9 was superb. More recently, Chained Echoes, I thought was surprisingly good, effective storytelling, um, and one of the most impactful games that I've played. Which this is gonna sound like a joke, but it's really not. Atelier Sophie 2, like nailed it. Just that was a home run in terms of writing, story, world building, character development, all of the stuff that I care about in a JRPG, and it was just a 10 out of 10 for me. So yeah,
Nice.
a lot of games, they're all over the place.
No, that's cool though. Like some classics, some new stuff, some indies. I mean, that's a good variety. Cool. Well, I'm glad people, can get to know you a little bit there. I love that Final Fantasy story. That's so funny. I didn't know that. But yeah, no, I just want everyone to kind of get to know Jack a little bit more. Obviously, as we keep doing this, they'll get to know you more. But Jack's got a big personality, so I think he's going to be really fun for this chat, or for this, this stream, this show. But as the title of the video implies, let's get started with like our first piece of news, and that is Chrono Trigger's 30th anniversary. And so Square Enix put out this kind of tweet. I believe it was in Japanese, and they talked about different things they're doing. So let me kind of just read this article. This is from Gematsu. They do a great job. They cover pretty much everything. So they put out this tweet saying, to mark the 30th anniversary and to express our gratitude to everyone who's played Chrono Trigger, we are planning a variety of projects over the next year that will go beyond the world of the game. Please look forward to the latest information. So you can find information on the Chrono Trigger X or Twitter page, and then Square Enix might also do that as well. Yeah, and so if for whatever reason you haven't played Chrono Trigger, you can play it on DS, the Super Nintendo, if you really want to dig that up. The original PlayStation, which people don't love that port, nor do they really like the port on Steam or mobile. But I think maybe that's something they'll hopefully address in in the coming months or whatever. So anyway, so what is your thoughts on that? On Chrono Trigger possibly coming in with a remake. Like, what do you think they're going to do a remake, or what do you make of this 30th anniversary celebration?
I would be super surprised if they do a remake.
Really?
Honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's little to gain from it, but there's a lot to lose, right? If they do a remake and it turns out like some of the Square Enix PC ports, or like, I mean, like you were just saying, all of the ports they've done of Chrono Trigger have been just hot garbage. And so like every time that they do that, people are like, oh, this is bad, right? Think about like the goodwill that's lost for every remake of Skyrim or of GTA 5 or whatever else. And like Chrono Trigger, as it is now and as it stands, is viewed by most people as basically JRPG perfection.
Yeah.
If you try a remake, whether that's like a very faithful one-to-one style remake, even if you just updated the graphics to like an HD 2D style, there's bound to be some hate from some people and some pushback. And so even though, yeah, it's going to sell, I don't think that the fan base is big enough that it's going to sell enough to justify it. And I don't think that the fan base is big enough that you can afford to divide. Instead, I think that Square is making the right business move here, which is let's just cash in on all the fans so that whether they like the new style or the old style, whatever, we're just going to get their money on the anniversary celebration stuff. We're going to bring them in on these things. But I don't think that a remake would happen.
Interesting. Okay. Because that a lot of people asked these kinds of questions. So I guess I'll give my take real quick, and then we can like look at some of the questions. Because if you look at the article, it's very or the tweet, it's very specifically worded. It says, we're going to do a variety of projects that will go beyond the world of the game. So it doesn't really say anything about a game or the game, So that to me, that smells like maybe a concert tour. Maybe it's Japan loves their stage plays, so maybe a stage play, maybe a manga series, maybe an anime. I don't know. But deep down, I would love a remake. But speaking of that, let me get into some of the comments here. So first, this was from Cryptic Woods 5411 on YouTube. He says, for Chrono Trigger's anniversary, can we expect a remake? It sounds like it's going to be a big 30th anniversary, but I don't know where to set my expectations. My advice is to have zero expectations because then if they do have a remake, then great, you'll be pleasantly surprised. But if they don't, then you're like waiting a whole year and you're like, where's the remake? And then it just doesn't happen. Then you're going to get bummed out. So what's your advice to our buddy Cryptic Woods over here? Should he be I know you basically said you don't think they're going to have a remake, but
I would keep in mind we're talking about a game that is 30 years old, that doesn't have like a live service element to it, right? So there's no continuing game at all. So this is only for fans of something that was released 30 years ago, which a lot of modern gamers aren't going to know, right? And it's released five I think console generations ago. Like, this is not a modern contemporary thing. It doesn't have as big of an audience as it feels like whenever you're in our community, right? Like, it's gonna feel like,
it's legendary,
of course,
right?
everybody knows Chrono Trigger, everybody loves Chrono Trigger, right? But I don't think that there's that big of an installed fan base outside of Japan. I would say that in Japan, they definitely know their people. They definitely have the ability to produce things like you were saying, things like concert tours, things like stage plays, stuff like that. Maybe even it's possible on the more produced end that they release like I don't know, a Chrono Trigger auxiliary anime series or something, where maybe it goes through the like, what would be cool is if they made like a little short, like 5 or 6 episode series going through some of the different characters, right? Like, tell us
that
the
would be
story
cool.
of Glenn and Cyrus or something through like a 20-minute anime short, and then tell us the story about Chrono's hometown, or tell us the story about Queen Lean and like the succession and things like that. Maybe some cool things like that. That would be on the very high end of the expectations, though. Like,
Yeah.
I don't anticipate this. I have no reason to believe that anything like that is in the works. I would actually expect a lot less.
Yeah, like I think at best we can expect like a nice art book that details the development history or something like that. Like, that would be the one thing they could put out that I would actually want to buy. But yeah, my hope against hope is because people have been asking for it for so long, right? Like, remake Chrono Trigger, and especially now with this HD 2D thing that's so popular, people feel like it's a slam dunk. And speaking of that, so Red Stratus 97 says, Acebreaker 7 on Discord said, if Chrono Trigger does get a remake, which style would you want it to be? HD, 2D, or 3D? It'd be like visually like Visions of Mana. So let's just pretend that it does get remade and they're working on it. Which version do you think would you prefer? And then maybe like which one do you think would sell better?
Sell better? I mean, if the goal here is sales, then they almost need to do like the Final Fantasy VII style remake, because that's the stuff that people latch on to and buy. But as far as the fans go, I'm a little bit torn on this. I really am, because the reason, let me kind of explain my thinking here. So HD 2D feels almost like kind of, what's the point? It's just an updated, prettier version of, but Chrono Trigger still really holds up visually as it is now. And so it wouldn't really add that much for it to be remade in that style. At least I don't think so. And then the full 3D style, like Mana, which I loved in Mana, I thought it was excellent. I think that that's going to be really tricky if you're going to keep a lot of the essence of the game, which is that it's very turn based. It has the active system, right? But you need to wait for somebody else to be ready to do like the dual and triple techniques, and you have to plan around
Mm,
all these different things. So you'd have to completely remake a lot of the functionality that makes Chrono Trigger work and makes it so interesting and so in depth and so fun to still play 30 years later. And I think that a lot would be lost in that translation. It would be very cool to see some of these environments rendered out in that 3D style, but I think that you would lose too much in the translation. And so I don't know, man. If I had to pick one, HD 2D, but
okay.
honestly, even just releasing the base game ported onto modern consoles would be awesome.
It would be. So, Oz has a comment here that I kind of like. He's like, I have the old one. Why not look into the Akira Toriyama styled 3D, kind of like Dragon Quest, like Dragon
Yeah.
Quest 11? Because I mean, even you look at the character, the art right here on the article, and it's Akira Toriyama, who sadly has passed away. But you know, trying to do that in 3D could be cool. But I'm with you. I think you're talking about like how do you appease the old fans but still appeal to the new ones. I don't know, man. I think there's something to that HD 2D art style that when people look at it, it's just sort of like, whoa, like that looks so cool. And I actually agree with you too when you say like, how big is the Chrono Trigger fan base actually? Because you hear so much buzz online or like people talk. It's like, oh, Chrono Trigger, it's like the greatest RPG ever made, and it's like, okay, maybe. And is there really that many people that are fans of it still? Are there really that many people that are like clamoring for a remake or for it to come back? So I I think if they were to do a remake, I think HD 2D is the way to go. It's probably cheaper. I have no idea, like development cost wise, like what it cost to make an HD 2D game versus like a big 3D game like Dragon Quest. But I imagine HD 2D is probably cheaper, and that team has got they probably have the production pipeline down, so it's probably cheaper. I think it would make both fan bases happier, but I also think there's like a ceiling to those games. Like I think there's some people when they look at pixel art, they're like, nah, like that looks old, which is so stupid to us. But I imagine there's just some people that wouldn't do it. But that would be my pick as well for sure. Definitely do HD 2D. I think it did a lot for whatchamacallit, Star Ocean. Although that was sort of already an HD 2D game in a way. But like I think when people saw that, they're like, holy shit, this game looks amazing. um, so yeah, that's kind of my thought. We got a lot of different people here. So Kenneth is saying HD 2D pops, it has fidelity and nostalgia working for it, which is true because like it's not literally just taking the same sprites and like upresing it. They put some extra, stuff into it, and they have to make the backgrounds 3D um, and stuff like that. So we got Nick here saying, I love HD 2D, but my excitement will be diminished if a Chrono Trigger remake is in the HD 2D style. Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, any final thoughts on this Chrono Trigger stuff before we move on?
I am excited to see what they announce for it, but I expect nothing.
I think that is honestly the best way to do it because, yeah, otherwise your expectations will definitely get thrown out of whack. All right, so let's move on to our next story. This is interesting because this kind of, for us, it broke like late last night, maybe early this morning for everyone else. But there was a website called Kabuton. It's a Japanese website. I don't know what it is, but they, I guess, got some information directly from Square Enix's president Takashi Kiryu, saying that Final Fantasy 16 has sold over 3.5 million copies. Now, you might be saying like, "Oh, okay, well, cool, I guess." But to give this some context, Final Fantasy 16 sold a little over 3 million copies launch week. So basically, it hasn't sold anything since launch week. And we had the PC port, and there was a bunch of DLC. So that's really, I think that's pretty like damning that people either don't care or I don't know. Like that to me, that's just really not good. So yeah, what I know we both are not big fans of this game, but what's your take on basically it not selling too many more copies after launch?
I think that launch week is always going to be your moneymaker for mainline Final Fantasy games. Right? People are going to buy them because it has name recognition. The same way that people still flog themselves going to see Star Wars movies, even though they know, like, we haven't had a good one since like episode 6 is like, okay, I'll take that. But
yeah.
Anyway, same thing here. Like, mainline Final Fantasies have not been kind to us in the last couple of decades.
So it's like some would argue since 10, right?
Yeah, right. And we still buy them. And there were a lot of hopes on Final Fantasy 16, but as the game came out and people started to play it and hear it from their friends, and as the reviews started coming out, and I believe your review called it, quote, a joyless experience.
Yeah.
And that sentiment was echoed by a lot of the people who played it. And so, like, even if the story is great, and even if the graphics are amazing, and even if the combat is passable, right? Because it wasn't good. It doesn't coalesce into anything fun to play. And unfortunately, for the storyteller side of the medium, the fact is that video games are still an escape, and they are still meant to be fun. And it didn't do it, right? It didn't do that.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Like, what's weird? Like sometimes you can get a feeling like there's like this indescribable like hype that you feel, or like you get this feeling like, oh yeah, this game's gonna be good. Even at the initial reveal for Final Fantasy 16, I'm like, I feel like I should be more excited for this. Like the initial reveal trailer was like, okay, it's Final Fantasy 16, but I'm feeling nothing. And then as the trailers started coming out, I'm like, okay, these sort of like icon, like summon fights look cool, but like I'm still not really feeling it. And like, I'll say this, like it's a very well made game. Like they obviously spent a lot of money making it and it looks great. But like, if you took the name Final Fantasy off that game and you just called it like, the Fire Brothers or something, I don't know, like you would have no clue it's a Final Fantasy game outside of like Chocobos, and they're like barely in it. Like the things that make Final Fantasy to me, it's like the party. You basically don't really have a party. Like Jill kind of joins you, and then you have Torgal the dog, but like you can't control them really. And
the best character in the game, Sid.
Oh, of course, yeah, Sid's awesome. Yeah. But like exploration is like essentially meaningless because there's nothing to find. Like I remember exploring and I found one of those little sparkles and it was like 2 gil. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. Like what like a total waste of my time. and there's no like secret cave where if you fight a secret boss, you can get a cooler weapon. Like the stats basically don't matter. It's not like this guy's weak to fire, this one's weak to ice. Like there's no elemental integration, none of that. So yeah, like equipment, gear, exploration didn't matter. And holy crap, like I feel like the pacing of that game was terrible. Like the cutscenes would just go on and on and on and on. It's like, look how pretty our cutscenes are. It's like, I get it, but this is a game. I want to be playing the thing, And like I felt like the design of the levels was so basic. It's like, it's kind of linear. You fight some guys, you come to a big open area. Ooh, I wonder if we're going to fight guys here. Then maybe a little bit of story and then another linear hallway and then another little open area. It wasn't good. And I felt like I was being gaslit because, yeah, I put my review out and everyone hated it. But now it's like I was kind of right. Like there are some people that like the game, but I feel like the general sentiment is that people didn't like it, and clearly the sales reflect it. Like good games sell, right? Like if people like it, it's gonna sell. If it doesn't, okay, word of mouth is gonna get around, and I think that the sales trajectory speaks for itself. I think what you said about Star Wars is like a perfect, analogy. Like, okay, we're gonna keep going because there's this thing from our childhood that we love, and we just are crossing our fingers that it's still as good as when we were kids. But like, I actually have a suggestion. I'm curious what you think of this. I think they need to drop the numbers because when you look at Final Fantasy 16, people are like, holy shit, do I have to play 15 other games before I play this one? And I think they at some point need to just be like, okay, Final Fantasy, the Journey of Flame, or whatever. Like, I think people are going to be much more likely to want to dive in with that than like, because like this is a bad game to compare to. But like Assassin's Creed stopped numbering games; they just subtitled everything. But like, what do you think about that? Do you think that would help at all? Do you think there are people that get turned away because we're getting into ridiculous numbers at this point?
I'd say it's possible, but I don't I don't think that is their biggest leverage point at all, right? Because like Final Fantasy is a well enough recognized brand that by this point, right? Because it's like nearly 40 years old. I think
Mm,
the first one was like 1987 or something. And so
yeah,
it's nearly 40 years old at this point. It's part of the culture. Anybody who's in video games and even people who are just like ancillary related to it. Like my wife knows Final Fantasy, right?
yeah,
And I think that people kind of understand that these aren't together. But also the other problem is that Final Fantasy does so many spin-offs and side projects
mm,
that
yeah,
it would be hard for the mainstream culture to understand, like, wait, is this one of the big ones or is this the Crystal Chronicles? Because there
yeah,
is a big difference between even love it or hate it, like between a Final Fantasy 13 or a Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Those are different
yeah,
games on different levels.
yeah, exactly. That's also true because it's not like, yeah. But so Mad Kaiser brings up a good point. Like maybe Resident Evil is a better comparison because they drop the numbers, but they're also kind of cute with the logos. Like they do the Roman numerals. They try to like
Mm.
hide the number in there. Um, but yeah, I have some people have also tossed this idea around, and we were kind of just touching on this a little bit. But I think what would be kind of fun for the next Final Fantasy is if they straight up did like it's HD 2D, but like it's Final Fantasy 17. Like they go all in with like the story and the voice acting, but they just make it HD 2D. Like, what do you think of? I think that would be really cool, and that I don't know if it would sell as well, but I think that would, and bring it back to turn based because people always are like bring turn based back. But what do you
Mhm.
think of that idea?
I would love that. And I mean, if I had my druthers, take us back to Ivalice, right? Like take us
Yes.
back to that world of Final Fantasy 12, Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story,
Yeah.
like really, because that world is so cool. The setting is so just ripe to expand out to see more of like the political machinations from 12 and from Tactics and just like the setting itself of like the kind of low fantasy with a little bit of high fantasy injection into it. It Yeah, if they did a Final Fantasy 17 as an HD 2D style, the question though is like, would it sell? Would it?
Right.
Because there
Yeah.
there definitely is, like you mentioned this earlier, there is a cap for these games. And I saw a comment earlier where somebody mentioned that Dragon Quest 11 had the option to do either style, which
Mm,
yeah, eventually they did. That wasn't on launch though, right? Because on launch, you need the game to sell. And I don't think that they need to put as much into the fidelity as they did into 16 and even 15, right? Because you could tell that for both of those games, they put way more emphasis on graphics. And to do that, they just fired their whole writing team. Um, but I don't know. I would love an HE 2D style game or an option to play the game as in the way that Dragon Quest 11 did eventually.
Yeah.
And by the way, Kenneth, don't worry about your age there. I already aged myself by saying I played the first one on the NES.
Yeah. So Jack, actually, when I was just so everyone knows, so I live in Seoul, Korea. So does Jack and Ken. I actually, when I lived in Busan and taught English for the first time, I actually taught with him in Busan. So shout out to the Korea boys.
Right on, man.
um, but yeah, I so this is kind of interesting here. So he has this to say: Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D sold exceedingly well, even above Square Enix expectations, which sounds impossible, right? Like um, they always underperform their expectations. I wonder if there's this sort of like chase to appeal to like the Western market. I almost feel like because I heard a lot of rumblings that the Final Fantasy 16 team really liked the new God of War games. They really liked Witcher 3, and uh, but Dragon Quest 3 HD. I think a lot of those came from Japan. So I'd be really curious if if Final Fantasy 17 did go classic. Pixel turn-based. I wonder if that would appeal to Japan more and maybe bump the sales. I don't know. I would love to be a fly on the wall inside Square Enix when they're trying to figure all this out, because it's got to be really hard to figure out, like, fuck, like, what do we do? And Oz said this earlier. Let me see if I can find this. But they were saying that, I don't know if this is true, but he said that Rebirth sold even less than 16. I just don't think they shared numbers. I don't know if it sold less than 16. It wouldn't surprise me. Although I believe the PC port sold way better than the PC port for 16. Like that PC, people love the PC port. So I don't really know the numbers. They haven't updated them in a while. But wouldn't surprise me, which is a bummer. I just don't understand why that didn't sell better, because I think straight up Rebirth's like a top 3 game all time for me. I love that game. I know you didn't like it as much as I did, or maybe at all, but I freaking love that game.
I I thought it was good, but I struggled to finish it. In some parts of it, like the pacing was bad. The over reliance on mini games was
Mm.
silly. But to the 16, 17 HD 2D stuff like that, and especially to the Dragon Quest thing, I I definitely agree that like the Dragon Quest 3 HD, that's a good indicator to the consumer base. But I also wonder if there's not just like a massive hunger right now for Dragon Quest content,
Mm,
period. Because
yeah.
Dragon Quest 11 brought a lot of people into the fold in the Dragon Quest series, myself included. Before that, I'd never played a Dragon Quest game. But since then, I've played 5 and 8 on different ports. And
Mm,
so when 3 came out, I was also like, yeah, I'm going to snatch that up because I never had a chance to play it. And we're all still, so far, the only news we have of Dragon Quest 12 is a logo. Like,
yeah.
come on, guys. Like, it's been like what, 5, 6 years since 11 released.
Yeah, I believe it came out in 2018.
Okay,
I
so
could be wrong. Yeah. It's
yeah,
been a
so
while.
7 years, and like there is a hunger in the community, and especially in Japan, for just anything. Give us Dragon Quest, and so the
That's
sales
true.
would make sense to be quite high.
That I think that's the incalculable thing, that like when you're making something that you can't account for, like, this is maybe a weird comparison, but if you think about like Animal Crossing New Horizons came out right when the pandemic hit, and so the sales of that thing just exploded, and people were doing like talk shows on that game, and like the people were doing crazy stuff with that game. And so I think you're right. Like, there something for to keep in mind with the Dragon Quest could just be like people are hungry. And so what I'm really curious about now is how they're going to remake 1 and 2 in HD 2D, and supposedly they're coming out this year. I wonder if those sales are going to be softer, because now it's like, okay, we got our Dragon Quest fix. Maybe I'll play that, maybe I won't. I'll be curious to see what those ended up doing.
I would be really curious to see, and there's no way that we're ever going to see these numbers because games don't make these numbers public. But I would be super curious to see how these different games look numbers wise in terms of completion, because that is the thing that the publishers can see on the back end, right? They can see like how many of these people who buy the game are even turning it on, how many of them are completing it, and things like that. Because something like a Dragon Quest 1 and 2 might sell well to nostalgia or to the hunger, but then just have like a remarkably low completion rate. And if Dragon Quest 3 had that problem, then anybody who bought 3 but never played through it would not then buy the 1 and 2 remake. And so I would be curious to see how those things lay out. But again, pure speculation. We will never, ever, ever see those numbers.
The only data we can go on, and this is probably anecdotal and not super accurate, is like trophy data, because like you could look at trophy data for like, okay, what's the earliest trophy you can get? Like beat the first enemy. I have no idea. I don't know what the trophies are, but you could look at that. But even then, that's not always, like sometimes people play with the internet off, or I don't know. There's a million different things that doesn't make that super accurate. But anyway, as far as 15 or 16, yeah, not good. Square's got to do something with Final Fantasy to shake it up, because, or just like, this is what it is now. Like, it's not what it used to be. Other games have passed it by. You just have to like come to grips with like, you're going to cap out at like 4 or 5 million copies, and you just have to be okay with that.
I don't think I can handle that. I genuinely don't think that I can handle, like personally, I can't handle giving up another one of my favorite franchises. I was recently, I know this isn't quite JRPG, but it is RPG. I recently have just had my heart completely devastated by the death of the Dragon Age franchise, which is done. Like it's over, it's finished. And I've just had to accept it, like, yeah, the team is long gone, the studio is essentially defunct at this point, and like one of my favorite franchises of all time is just dead now. I can't handle it if Square comes out and they're like, from now on, Final Fantasy is just going to be kind of mid. That's just what we're doing now, guys. I'm like, no.
I think Mad Kaiser makes a really good point. He says, I think the major issue is having an identity crisis, because like people always say, like, what is a Final Fantasy game? Right? Like I heard Yoshida, who was like the producer for 16, he's like, a Final Fantasy game is a game that always has bleeding edge visuals and is fun to play. I'm like, that's the stupidest answer I've ever heard. Like, if and I genuinely have a trouble answering that, right? But like, okay, if you were to like say like, okay, what's a Persona game? Okay, Persona game is a turn-based RPG where you play as a Japanese high school student. You split your time between dungeon crawling and having social sim issues. Like, great. Okay, what's a Dragon Quest game? Okay, Dragon Quest is typically it's a turn-based RPG with anime art style, and it's medieval setting, and you're trying to save the world. Like, there's identity to these big franchises, but Final Fantasy, for better or worse, is always so different that I almost think it's a good idea that they should rope it back around, because now people have no idea what to expect. It's almost like a new franchise every time a new game comes out.
Yeah, kind of, but I'm going to push back a little bit, and I'm going to say that like one of the key elements to a Final Fantasy game is the characters and the story arc and how they fit together like a puzzle. Like, yes, the characters are interesting and grow, but they also grow together as part of the story. And so like, if let's take a really good example, Final Fantasy X, like Wakka's story is part of the main story. Yuna's story is part of the main story, but both of those grow separately. They both have their different character arcs throughout, and they grow alongside Tidus throughout the whole thing. I have to correct myself because in my mind I still call him Titus. But anyway, they grow together with him throughout the thing as characters, as the story. It fits together like pieces, and you feel a deep connection to every one of those characters by the end. Now, some of the antagonists are hit or miss. Like Seymour is one of the weaker antagonists compared to like a Kefka or a Sephiroth or something like that.
Yeah.
But the point is that like in the greatest Final Fantasy games, it really is about the characters and the story and how that growth happens over time. And that, like you said earlier, without having a party, that just didn't happen in 16. And in 15, it felt like they had the makings of something like that, but they just didn't deliver. And none of the characters really lived up to anything until you get to like the DLC stuff. And by the time that that was out, everyone has already tossed the game, right?
Yeah. And then like it's a shame, like I understand the turmoil that 15 went through, but like if Royal Edition was the launch version, I just wonder if that would have had a different legacy, because now you can like swap between and control any of the 4 characters, whereas at launch you could only play Noctis. So yeah, there's very, very weird design choices and business situations that you
Yep.
just have to deal with. That's sort of the frustrating thing about games, is it's like this really annoying Venn diagram of like creativity and business, and you just gotta
I
work with it.
wonder I wonder if one of the biggest issues that they've had is in trying to appeal to the mature audience. Because
Mm,
15 and 16 both were specifically aiming for that like darker, grittier, mature feeling, but it I don't know, it feels like they're kind of pigeonholing themselves. Because when you look at something like Final Fantasy 6 is a great example of like a really, really mature and dark story. Like you go through all of the stuff only to fail and the world is destroyed. So screw you, right? Like it and then in the world of Ruin, like Celeste's side story immediately begins with like deep depression, possibly leading to suicide, depending on your choices, right? Like it is not a child's game, but isn't it doesn't gatekeep and say like you must be 25 or older to play this game. Like it doesn't have that
yeah.
feeling to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there's mature themes, but it kind of can be light hard. Like there's some weird wacky little animations. Like these are like little pixel characters, right? So it's I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway,
Well, I think
sorry, that
we've
that was a long rant of mine.
no, this is what we're here for. I mean, there's no real time limit. We can take our time and really go through these stories. So, but anyway, so next one, this was pretty exciting. This also kind of broke, not super long ago. So Atelier Yumia, which comes out, I believe, next week, as of the time of this recording, is getting a demo, which is very, very cool. So the demo comes out March 17th. And I love when demos do this. So the save data will be carried over to the full game, and it's on every platform it's coming out for: PC, PS4, PS5, Switch, and Xbox. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the first Atelier game that's launched on an Xbox console?
I think so, but I'm not certain.
Okay. I didn't play Ryza 3, but I also don't have an Xbox, so I wasn't really paying attention. But to me, I feel like that's the first time it's come out on Xbox. So this one,
I wonder if
oh,
that might be this is just a thought. I wonder if that might be so that they can maybe not initially, but down the line put it onto Game
Game
Pass to try
Pass,
and get more people in. Yeah.
smart.
Oh, okay. Kenneth says yes. This is
Wiki
the
says
first one.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. um, so we have to kind of be careful what we say here, but you know, we somebody has been playing Atelier Yumia. And so I'm curious if you can speak vaguely on this. So it says, in the demo, you'll be able to play from the prologue to the early game main quest, Pioneering of the Ligneous region. You can experience gathering ingredients, battle synthesis, and battling, and then it carries over to the demo. So based on what this says, can you give a rough estimate? Like, how long do you think the demo will be if you play through the prologue and then up until this particular quest?
So based on the sound of it, it sounds like most of the first region will be available to you, because it's, if you've ever played an Atelier game, you know that you have the quest, but you can like go around and do things. You can go around and collect stuff and fight monsters and all that stuff. And so, as far as time, if you were to beeline the thing, probably a couple of hours. But if you wanted to take your time, do a bunch of exploration, find a bunch of things, I imagine you could do that for many hours. Um,
Cool.
and I would recommend anybody who has a passing interest in the Atelier games, if you've ever played them, this is probably going to be an easy pickup for you to check out the demo. And if you haven't tried any of the Atelier games, this demo might be a fun place to step in. I can't say too much, but I can say this would be a very cool place to step in and check to see how you feel about this, because you might be surprised.
Cool. Yeah, no, I definitely want to check it out because I was really into the Atelier games on the PS3 mainly because there weren't many JRPGs on the PS3. That was kind of like all we had, and then like Ni no Kuni came along and saved us. But this one looks really cool. Like the combat looks amazing. Obviously, like the character designs look incredible. It just seems like apparently they got a much bigger budget for this game from Ryza. So I'm really, really curious to see what they have in store. And then speaking of that, they seem to be going all in with this game because like we got a demo, and then this is kind of cool. So they're getting some crossover DLC with Tales of Grace's F, and it looks like it's just a costume. And they said it's going to be free, but they didn't say when it's getting released or if there's going to be more. But that's also kind of a weird crossover because it's not like they're both owned by the same company. Like Tails is Bandai Namco and Atelier is Koei Tecmo. So interesting. But I believe they did this for Ryza 3 or 2. Oh no, it was Sophie 2 with Tales of Arise, I think. Right? So
Yeah.
this is not the first time Tails and Atelier have crossed over, but yeah. Thoughts on this costume DLC?
Not really. Like, costumes are fun. The Atelier games almost always have costumes, and they have different versions of the outfits that you can change your characters into. And as long as they're well designed, which they always are, they look good. If you are a, oh, I can't remember. There's a word for it where the certain people love doing the aesthetic and the different costumes. This is a nice addition. It's free. It's a nice crossover,
Mm,
and from what I've seen so far, the costumes in Atelier seem really good. Seem well designed. I'm sure this will be good.
cool. Yeah, no, I'm curious, like, if games get popular, they they always have the more avenues get opened up and they can do more crossovers. Like you look at how popular Persona 5 got and how popular Nier Automata got, like those are crossed over with fucking everything. So,
Like Stellar
if
Blade.
yeah, exactly. Like Stellar Blade. Yep. Yep. And so who knows if Yumiya is even more popular than Ryza, then we could potentially see more of this stuff, but we shall see. Okay, so next, this one is interesting. So they announced the Sky Trails in the Sky remake voice cast. So let's go take a look at that. and we'll just go through the different actors. By the way, I just want to preface everyone watching this the laws in Korea are very different. So like we're seeing some very family friendly ads, but Jack knows what I'm talking about. Sometimes the ads are wild and I don't know how they get away with them. So if we come across an ad that is just like, whoa, apologies ahead of time, because sometimes I'll just be browsing. I'm like, how is this, like, how did this get past anybody? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, I know. I have seen those things, and it's even worse if you're in a class of children, and
Oh God, yeah.
it's just like basically an ad for hentai webtoon, and you're like, how did this? But nobody seems to notice. Like it's just part of life. Everybody has ad blindness,
I
even to just
guess.
like some. I'm not going to say those words. I'm not going to say
Yeah.
those words. Go ahead.
So anyway, so let's just go through the different characters. So for Estelle, being voiced by Stephanie Shea, I'm not super familiar with her. But Stephanie Shea. Next one I am much more familiar with. So Joshua Bright is voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. So he plays the protagonist from Persona 4. He was the Asian Black Ranger from Power Rangers. He was also Nero in DMC 5. Like he does a bunch of stuff. So I feel like that's kind of a high profile get for Atelier, or not Atelier for Trails, but excited that he's in that. And then feel free to chime in if you know any of these actors or have any thoughts. But Michelle Ruff for Scheherazade. Yeah, Scheherazade. She does, I believe she plays Neptune in the Neptunia games. And for as bad as those games are, she does a really good job voicing Neptune. Like that's always like when I review those games, like that's like the one shining bright spot is the voice acting. So that's interesting. And I just have to say, like, these are kind of the first time I'm seeing some of these screenshots. You know, we both, we love our Falcom games, but the thing about the Falcom games is we've had to deal with mediocre visuals. I feel like they took like 2 steps up with the visuals, like the animations and just visually how everything looks. Like this game looks amazing, like visually.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Matthew Mercer. Wow. So Olivier is being played by Matthew Mercer. I mean, this is a very prominent voice actor.
And
He's
also, what an
Vincent.
excellent character for him.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly. So Matthew Mercer, he plays Vincent in the Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy. He played Leon in Resident Evil 6. Yes, and then he's like usually one of the hosts for Critical Role.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But he's been in a bunch of stuff. Like he's a very prolific voice actor. I'm kind of surprised they got him for this. Let's see. Okay, we got I always forget how this is pronounced. A got or a gate. Ben Pronsky, don't know who that is. This art, cool updated art. God, this game looks like visually just looks freaking sick. Christina V, I like her. Okay, so Chloe's being played by Christina V. She played the cat in Ease 9. She does a lot of stuff, but she's always that kind of high pitched cutesy girl character. Okay, so Tita is voiced by Brianna Knickerbocker. I believe she played Kasumi in Persona 5. And I know she plays Donna in Ease 8, who was like a fan favorite. So what a character design. Look at this. She's got this big old cannon, like this like cute little girl. Amazing. I totally forget a lot about this game because I played it like when it came out back in like 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, like OG on the PSP. So I'm like super curious to play this again. Okay, so we have Zin, voiced by Vic Chow. Don't know who Vic Chow is. But anyway, yeah, I'm super excited for this game. Do you have just any general thoughts about this upcoming Sky remake?
I am very much looking forward to it. I'm super glad that they are finally, I guess, selling and so keeping up with the development for the Trails games in the West, and that they're trying to make them more accessible. The lack of ability to play the Trails in the Sky games on anything other than Steam has been really an issue. And I mean, they remedied the Crossbell arc not being in the West, thankfully. Now getting more access for people to play Trails in the Sky and to play it in a more modern way, because 2010 had much better looking and feeling releases than this game. What
Oh
you said
yeah.
earlier about the Falcom games, the just kind of middling graphics, it's about right. But this looks great, and from what I've seen of the gameplay, it looks like they do a really good job of maintaining the feel of the Trails games. And this might be an evolution the from the Daybreak system where, like it's field battles plus turn based.
Yeah.
This might be similar. It might just be the action field based stuff, which would also be very interesting. Like, I'm looking forward to it, and so far, I know I was maybe the only person who enjoyed Daybreak 2, but like I loved the shit out of it. I thought that it was great. I thought that what the team did with it was excellent. The developers, and um, I I'm looking forward to more of the stuff that they're putting out here. I can't wait to play this.
Yeah, no, me too. And a lot of people are saying like now finally we have the best entry point, because people are always like, oh, where do I start? There's like 100 games in the series. Like, here's where you start, like for real. Um, and I've heard, so there's 3 Sky games, and 3 is sort of like a weird side story thing. But
Mhm.
I feel like they've got to remake 2 after this, right? Like at least have, because that like kind of bookends the story. Like you can probably skip 3,
Yeah.
but do you think they'll also remake 2?
They they have to. Like that's already got
Yeah.
to be in the works. I only assume that they're putting this out not to test the waters for chapter 2, because they have to do that. Right? They
Yeah.
have to do second chapter. Um you cannot, I mean, you played this game, right?
Yeah.
So
There's a big, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you cannot end it at the end of this game. It just doesn't work. I'm not going to say anything and spoil anything, but you just cannot end it here. So you
Yeah.
have to. My assumption is that we're going to see second chapter maybe 6 to 12 months after first chapter releases, because you still want it fresh in people's minds as well.
Yeah. Because like the really unfortunate thing with Sky, I believe, Sky 1 came out in 2010, and I think it took them 4 years to put out second chapter. And by then, like the PSP was like dead, and then like, okay, well, we'll put it on PC. Okay, but then Sky 1's not on PC. It was just a mess. So this is like a nice, clean way to kind of let everyone experience it.
And then
How it
3 was like locked on Vita for a long time. And it's like, wow, all 12 people who own a Vita can play it. Neat.
Yeah, exactly. It was, I mean, I read like the horror stories of like them trying to translate that game. And it was basically like one person locked in a closet, more or less, like doing it. And like I feel for them, like that was a monumental task, but like it doesn't change the fact that experiencing it as a player, it wasn't ideal.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, the only thing that worries me about this release in the West is that like forever Falcom was just handing everything to NIS America, and then all of a sudden here comes Gung Ho out of nowhere, and I'm like, who the hell is Gung Ho, and why are they handing it off to them? And like, it's been really weird. Like from a creator standpoint, it's been really hard to get a hold of them, like just to talk to a person. Like, hey, I want to review this game. Who do I talk to? And then like people were really concerned about, like, there was a question. Let me see if I can find this. Okay. So Red Stratus 97 says, are the rumors true that Trails in the Sky remake, the physical version, is going to be an Amazon exclusive? I heard about this, but I can't seem to confirm. So let me pull up this article from Noisy Pixel. So this is kind of a breakdown of how the physical release is going to work. So limited run games, God, I hate those guys. They just take forever to release their games. So that's the collector's edition, and that'll come out later. And then the standard version will be an Amazon exclusive, and then in Europe, it's going to be published through Clear River Games. So yeah, it's just a super scattered release. Like if it was with NAS America, they do everything in house. Like they do a nice collector's edition themselves that you can buy it through their store or just any, big retailer. So it seems like a giant mess, which I don't know if that's going to confuse players or whatever. Because the other thing about Gung Ho is they're doing the Lunar Remastered Collection, and you can't even pre-order that game physically, which doesn't make any sense. You can, but like on launch day, they said you'll be able to buy it on Amazon, but I'm like, why would you not want to pre-order it? That doesn't make any sense. So I'm a little hesitant of Gung Ho until they can kind of get their shit together. But do you have any hesitation or reservations with Gung Ho or how they might handle the Western release?
Honestly, I wish I could collect physical games, but I mean, you live here in
Yeah.
Seoul too. Like the
Yeah, there's
reality
no
is that,
room.
like,
Yeah.
no, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. Um, I'm so just me personally, I'm less concerned about that, but I do understand the concerns and worries about that. Um, as far as the actual production goes, though, everything I have seen about this game so far just seems like massive green flags in the right direction.
Mm.
And it's possible that for whatever reason, Falcom looked at some of the other work that Gung Ho was doing and said like, "Hey, these guys are masters. Like NIS does a good job, but what if we could get a great job done?" I don't know. Again, I have no idea what the thinking was. Maybe they're the lowest bidder. Uh,
Also true. Yeah.
right? Like I don't know, and I don't know enough about the internals of the business behind Falcom to kind of guess where they're headed directionally, if they're trying to like just get this one across the ocean on the cheap or whatever.
This
Oh,
is
the XC
interesting.
guy.
I didn't know
Interesting.
that. So Mahi says that I guess a lot of people from Gung Ho, one of the guys used to be the Xseed CEO, and obviously Xseed first started handling the E's and the Trails game. So maybe there's just a old relationship there, and they're more comfortable working with this guy. So if that's the case, that makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, and then this is kind of interesting. You can speak to this more because I didn't play Daybreak 2, but Oz is saying like Gung Ho might have got it because NAS kept changing stuff. They even said like they were screaming they hate immigrants. Like what? Can you explain that, by the way? Like what is that? Does that have anything to do with the story, or is that just some random line that they shout?
No, so there that was related to the story.
Okay.
There's, without getting too deep into the story, there's some issues with what's going on in Calvert and with people coming in from other countries and how that's going, because there's still all the fallout from all of the Arabonia stuff for people who played Cold Steel and all of that. Like this is all after Reverie. So this is after Trails in the Sky, after Cold Steel, after the Crossbell arc, after all that. And the Empire is basically in tatters, and there is a lot of immigration going on and refugees, and there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment as well in the places that were less affected. It makes sense in the story, but but the line far less so. And then whatever decision was made to just have them like repeat the same voice lines in combat again and again and again, instead of, I don't know, say putting a limiter on it and say like, okay, in any given combat, only ever say any line one time, right? Instead, you get something like this legendary scene there. There you hate immigrants. But it was just the most jarring thing. And so that's why I put it into the review, because like of all the times that it was just annoying or they're just saying dumb stuff, the fact that they recorded this line and then threw it in there 50 times in the course of one combat encounter was just wild.
Oh, that's so funny.
I wish that I had been recording at that time to give you like the actual recording, because it is just like, it's tough to believe me when I say that, because you're like, that surely not. That doesn't even make any sense. Why would this happen?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Oh God. Well, that game that's coming out later this year, supposedly. So there's another game. I don't know when this is gonna come out, but there is a new hot indie game that I think is going to be the next like Chained Echoes or Sea of Stars, called Threads of Time. Now, we kind of watched this trailer a little bit before the stream started, but have you heard of this game, or do you know anything about this game?
No, but I'm hoping more Chained Echoes and less Sea of Stars.
Okay. So I'll play the trailer. We can kind of react to it in real time, and then we can kind of talk about it. But this game got a new trailer because I guess it was a part of the Humble Games. Humble Games is publishing this, and they had their own like direct or something recently. So anyway, we'll watch this new trailer. The sound is pretty low, so people watching, if it's too low, let us know. We can turn the sound up. But here's the new trailer for Threads of Time. Well, or not. Let me try that again. Hold on. Let me upload it again. I had this all pre-saved, and now whatchamacallit is messing me up. All right, take two. No? Oh, I see what's happening. Sorry. Is that the problem? No? Why is this not working? Okay, here we go. It's playing, but it's not playing.
For everybody watching, just play the Jeopardy song in your head while we're going through this. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to remove all the videos on my end, and then try to start this over.
Yeah, Lirock, another Chrono Trigger inspiration.
Yeah, exactly.
There are a lot of those, and most don't live up to that. But if it's just generally like 16-bit JRPGs with a heavy focus on story, writing, character development, and fun combat, then hopefully it'll be good.
All right, you know what? F this. We're just going to go to YouTube. All right.
Woo!
F it. We're doing it live. F it. This effing thing sucks. Okay. Threads of Time trailer. All right. Here we go. Or we'll do theater mode. We'll do all this fun stuff. Okay. Remove. And we're going to have to do this a few more times. Okay. Yay, we can see that. Perfect. All right, let's play this. And then I think I actually have to turn the sound on. Nope, we're good. Okay. If we can't hear the sound, man, we're in trouble. Ah, God damn it. Can't hear the sound.
I can hear it.
Threads of Time.
Oh, you can?
The time-traveling RPG that made waves at Tokyo Game Show last year.
That also might be on mic.
For you guys who are watching, can you hear the sound from the trailer?
Is a passionate
let us know.
90s JRPG fans who spent countless
can hear the
after-school
sound.
hours journeying through iconic games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy. from the amazing cast of characters to the eternally memorable soundtrack.
I mean, visually, it looks
the
incredible.
Rio Games team is on an adventure to capture the magic we remember from those timeless classics. Today, the team is excited to announce a fresh face joining the Threads of Time party, Barza, a daring
Okay, it was
sky
on my
pirate
end. I can hear it.
planning a heist in 1000 AD. Except they may have bitten off more than they can chew. So before we go, please wishlist Threads of Time, and thank you for watching.
I just love all the 2D like hand-drawn cutscenes. They just look cool. Like I just remember those were always like treats. Like you would get to a certain point in a story in a JRPG, then you get a cutscene like this. And I feel like we don't get a lot of those nowadays. So I just like that there's a lot of them. And this looks like really well done too.
So, other than the obvious homages and references, like the campfire scene or like the 1000 AD thing, other than that, this isn't giving me much Chrono Trigger vibes. It's giving me a lot more Breath of Fire feel.
Interesting. Okay.
And in a very good way. Like it looks like somebody had the idea to bring back Breath of Fire, but yeah, okay, so you're seeing it too, X-Zone, right? So it looks like somebody had the idea to bring back Breath of Fire, but nobody knows Breath of Fire anymore. So they're like, we'll call it Chrono Trigger inspired, but what we're really going to do is reintroduce people to the Breath of Fire thing, because that's what this looks and feels like to me in a very good way.
Yeah, I mean, I played like a little bit of 3 and 4 for Breath of Fire, so I'm not ultra familiar with it, but I just think visually, like it's taking that HD 2D thing and like supercharging it. Like the visuals look just unbelievable. They look super good. So explain to me, how does it, what Breath of Fire vibes does it give off? Because like I said, I'm not super familiar.
The wider cast of character, the mix of human and animal stuff, the combat setup there, right? Like especially this lad here in the middle there with the big hammer. He feels like almost ripped out of one of the Breath of Fire games to me. The idea that they're telling character stories rather than like characters being part of the main story, also very Breath of Fiery. This looks like it's going to have a wider cast of characters. If I'm remembering right, most Breath of Fire games had somewhere in the range of like 10 or 12-ish different characters that were playable, and you'd cycle through them and play them at different times. It's been decades since I've played a Breath of Fire game, but this is a lot of the feeling that I'm getting from it. And also just the actual animation style, like of that cut scene there feels again very Breath of Fiery. Or also even like Monkey Island in the cutscene animation style.
For sure.
But it looks cool.
Yeah, it does. You know, honestly, like here's the thing. Like whenever I think of like the hype cycle of a game, I think first it's got to catch you visually. Check. Like visually looks stunning, and if you can compare it to like an old classic that everyone loves, even better. And then I think next is like, okay, previews or reviews, like are they good? And then just word of mouth, because I remember getting hyped for Chained Echoes because I always do those big previews. I was like, whoa, this game looks pretty cool. And I didn't hear anybody talking about it. And then the reviews came out, and then that game like exploded. I am getting a similar feeling with this game. Like, I don't think it's getting talked about compared to how good it's going to be and how many people are going to buy it. Like, how many views? 25,000 views on a trailer. It's not bad, for an indie game. But I think this game's going to be like a big hit when it comes out. Like relative to its size, it's not going to sell like 20 million copies or something. But I think it's going to be I think it's going to be great. Cool. So
Do we know roughly when to expect it?
it doesn't have a release date. Let me check but I don't think so.
Just sometime this year.
Yeah, just wish list. Like we can go on Steam. Let me check the Steam page. It doesn't even say release date, says to be announced. So
yeah,
I think maybe next year, honestly.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought that it was. Oh, never mind.
Like,
I just see the title is from the showcase this year. For some reason, I thought that I had seen somewhere that it was a 2025 game, but yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah, because usually like we're halfway through March. I feel like by now they would have said 2025 if they thought they could hit it. So it's probably next year. All right. So speaking of trailers, Fuga Melodies of Steel just dropped a new trailer. And I think this game also looks pretty cool. So I'll let this play. It's kind of just detailing the combat system. But like, did you play any of the other Fuga games, like 1 or 2?
I haven't yet. They're on the backlog list.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I think they're cool little games. Like obviously like super small budget, but I like the ideas that they have with the game. Like those games constantly mix up gameplay. Like a lot of it are these tank battles where you're kind of going on this, like, it looks like a board game where you're going from one little node to the next and you're getting into battles. Every once in a while there's like little dungeon crawling. Once you complete a map, you can kind of go into town and talk to different characters. And then on your tank, you can interact with characters. And it's sort of like light social link stuff, like depending on if you increase your bonding level with the characters. I guess in this one, you can get special stories, but in the other one, they get like special abilities in combat and become stronger. And they're like cheap and short. So I think they're cool. And considering that they haven't sold well, I really got to hand it to CyberConnect that they're letting them finish the trilogy, because the first game didn't make its money back and neither did the second. So I'm kind of surprised they let them just keep making them. They must be really cheap to make.
Maybe.
Yeah. Or they just have a big passion for making them and they're like, no, we don't care if we lose money. It's our art. We got to put our art out. But this one's pretty wild because now you're like in a flying mech kind of tank thing. And one of the key like gameplay components that I always thought was really cool about these games is you can sacrifice one of your characters to automatically win a fight. So if you're like on a boss battle and it's tough, you can like put one of these kids in. They call it the soul cannon, I believe. And yeah, and you can just kill a character, which is wild. And then I think in this new one, you can like kill multiple characters or something. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, any thoughts on how it looks, or like, we always have a reason why it's on the backlog and it's not at the top of the list. Like what about it is not like grabbing you and making you want to play it like right now?
Well, I mean, for starters, I've spent the last 80 hours on a different project that I am not officially allowed to talk about yet.
Yeah.
No, every time that I want to play these games, right? Because there's so many of them at all times. And I think like on my PS5 right now, I've got like 20 or so games installed that are all like, I'm going to play this one next. I'm definitely going to play this one next. I'm definitely going to play this one next. And then Yakuza Pirate in Hawaii lands. And I'm like, but that looks really, really fun. So like, sorry, Euden Chronicles, you're still on the waiting list. And so
yeah,
for games that I was excited for years are still installed and not played yet, then whenever I find out about new games and it's like, oh, that looks really cool, you'll go on the list and like I'll throw some money and actually buy the game to at least support the developers and stuff and keep the thing going. But then I don't know if I'm ever going to have time to play it or not. And that is it's honestly heartbreaking, but it's a good problem to have. Like it's way better than the than the PS3 era,
Oh
right? Where
God.
you were just so starved for JRPGs that the who's the guys that you hate, the Neptunia
Oh
seemed
God.
like
Yeah.
a good
Idea
choice.
Factory. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like or
White Knight Chronicles 2. I was
Omega
like, please
Quintet.
be good. Yeah.
Yeah, and so now we're spoiled for choice, but unfortunately that also means that even if you don't have a real life, like even if playing video games was just, forget running a YouTube channel, forget working, like forget anything else, if just all you did all day every day was play video games 12 to 14 hours a day, you still couldn't get through all the games you want to play. It's
It's
just
true.
not possible.
Yep. It's true. Um, yeah,
But
that's
everything about the
definitely.
game looks amazing. I really, really want to play it.
Yeah, no, I finished one. I played a little bit of two, and I think two's better in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's the same problem. Just like games come out and there's nothing we can do. I could be mistaken, but I believe Fuga 2 came out the day before Tears of the Kingdom came out. And it was just like, dude, who's gonna buy that? Like, are you dumb? Like, and I'm actually buddies. He doesn't work there
Furries,
anymore.
that's who.
Hey, I'm actually buddies with the director of this game. He's actually a French guy, but he I guess is fluent in Japanese and lives in Japan. But now he works at Platinum. But yeah, he was telling me he was fighting really hard to like, can we please move the date? Like nobody's gonna buy it because it's the same week as Zelda. He's like, it's fine. And here we are. And I think we're gonna
Spoiler
get a lot
alert,
of those
it
same
was not
people.
fine.
Yeah. The narrator, it wasn't fine. I think we're going to get a lot of that nonsense this year with GTA 6. Like GTA 6 is going to come out and then like somebody's going to get cute and put out their indie puzzle platformer. It's like, it's different. People are going to play our game this week. And it's like, no, they're not. Everyone's going to play Grand Theft Auto. Like, come on. What are you doing?
Am I weird that like I have zero excitement for GTA 6? Just
I don't either, but I know I'm going to get sucked into it. Like people are going to be making videos and they're going to be talking about it and somebody's going to put a crazy clip and I'm like, fine, take my $70. Let's just figure this shit out.
$70. You don't think that they're gonna try to do the $100 price
No.
tag?
Okay, so here's the thing. People keep just saying that. Like it's like analyst guesses. It's just like they're just pulling stuff out of their ass. They're not, it doesn't, and one of them is Michael Pachter, who's like notoriously wrong about this stuff. So there's no way. Because here's the problem. If they do that, then everyone's going to try to do that. Right. And people are going to get cute. And it's like, oh, Assassin's Creed, the next one, we can charge $100. And it's like, honey, no.
Do you think there's
No.
gonna be a next one? I don't know, man. Ubisoft is on the ropes.
They sure are.
And
That's
so like
that's a game.
unless this game sells 10 to 12 million copies, like I don't know that Ubisoft stays afloat long enough to make another Assassin's Creed.
That's a great point. I'm actually excited for it. I know people were there's obviously the backlash because it's like, okay, finally we get a game in Japan, and instead of having two Japanese characters, we make one of them black, based on a historical figure that may or might not have ever existed. It's like, okay, interesting. But the thing is, I guess you can pick and choose who you play as at any given time. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna play as the girl because we're in Japan. I'm gonna play the Japanese person. I think it has the potential, like, gosh, that game had all the potential in the world to like finally be like a giant mega smash hit, but like they just kept shooting themselves in the foot like every step of the way. It's like, man, like what were you guys thinking? But anyway, we'll see what happens. It's out next week, so we'll find out soon enough.
Oh, is it? Oh yeah, I guess so. Oh my god. Yeah. I'm interested to see what happens with that, but if you are a believer in the no publicity is bad publicity thing, then like I guess we're about to find out.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of one of those suckers that's probably going to buy it. I love Ubisoft slop. I love those kind of games, like the checkmark games. Like I
Me too, man.
platinumed I platinumed Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I think I put like 100 hours of that game. Like that was so much fun. I loved that game. But Valhalla was too big. I gave up on that game at some point. I'm like 60 hours in and like not even halfway through the story. Like, what is this game? So I'm hoping they kind of meet in the middle with this one, but
what I've seen is that they said this game is a 30 to 40 hour runtime for the main story. And if you're a completionist, you should expect 80 to 100 hours. So it sounds a little bit more in line with Odyssey than the bloated mess that Valhalla was.
You know, the weird thing, though, is Valhalla sold really well. And I always wonder if it's one of those things like people liked the last game, so then the next game sells better because they liked the last game. So now, because Valhalla, people had problems with it and people have problems with Shadows, I wonder if that's gonna not do as well. I mean, like I said, we'll find out soon enough. This time next week, we might have sales numbers.
I mean, generally speaking, like for most things that are easily related, the sales are based on the last game. Because if you delivered a Final Fantasy VII, then when Final Fantasy VIII lands, people are gonna buy it, right? And so that's generally the thing. Now I wonder if the middling reception to Valhalla is going to. There's no way to separate whether that's the reason or any of the other stuff if the numbers are not good. But I hope for Ubisoft's sake that they're able to pull this one out, because I also like the games and I would like them to continue the things that they do mostly.
Yep. Cool. Okay. And then kind of the last piece of news, I saw this game and I thought it looked really cool. I don't know if I'd call it a JRPG necessarily, but I think people that like JRPGs would like this game. It's called Town of Zaz. So let me play the trailer here. It's kind of a mix of like a cozy game and like an action RPG. The one thing I know people aren't going to like is the animation style, because it's kind of jittery.
Can you turn it down just a bit?
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Cool.
There we go.
Yeah.
At first, when I was watching the trailer, I thought they were doing the time and eternity thing where the characters were like 2D, but then the more the trailer went, I'm like, oh no, it's 3D. The animation is just like in 24 frames or something. Like, game developers need to stop doing that. It always looks weird.
Did you ever play Dark Cloud?
Hell yeah. Dark
For
Cloud's
some
great.
reason, like this game is making me think of Dark Cloud, and I don't think I could put my finger on why.
Dark Cloud, I would love another Dark Cloud.
Factory at home.
Rune Factory at home.
I like that. That was good.
But yeah, I just think the art style looks really cool. Like, I'm a big sucker for like vibes and art style. So the art might sell me on this one alone, but like the gameplay's got to be good too. Like, I don't know. I guess I don't really know what the game loop of this is gonna be. Like, I don't know if, because it shows farming stuff, so I don't know if it's all about the farming. I don't know if you're building, because it's called the Town of Zaz, so I don't know if you're going to be building up this town or what. They didn't really show too many details, but visually it looks really cool.
It looks kind of like in terms of gameplay, in terms of the loop, it looks like it might be something similar to Moonlighter, where you go into the dungeon to collect items and materials or whatever, and then you take those back to the town and you're able to build a thing or open a shop or farm it or whatever else it might be. Again, I know nothing about the game except what we're seeing here, but I'm kind of going to agree with Oz here and say like this. I mean, yeah, it looks like a Rune Factory knockoff, but also to me, it kind of feels like like a mobile game or like I don't know, a $30 Switch game or something.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? Where like this is something to
yeah.
play on the subway or on the plane where you don't really need to focus and you can kind of just like zone out and where for a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have very little excitement for this, but I can definitely see. I wouldn't be surprised if it also releases on Android and iOS. Is
Yeah.
it?
No, so we got
It's not.
basically
It's
the
not listed there.
consoles.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
listed
I
the
didn't see it,
consoles.
but again, I really think that animation style doesn't do games favors. Like I know, not that this game was any good, but Loop 8 also did that, where like the animation style was like choppy, and people. I remember the reviews were saying like, "Oh, the performance wasn't good." It's like, no, it's not that the performances wasn't good. It was an intentional design choice to like put the animation at like 24 frames, and the rest of the game ran at 60. It's so strange. I don't know why games do that. Um, but anyway, just another cool. I think it looks cool. I'm the only one that thinks it looks cool, but we'll see what happens if it ends up being decent. I was getting some sort of like Wild Arms vibes with like the puzzles, because in Wild Arms everybody has like different tools, like a gun
Mm,
or a grappling hook or whatever. But I don't know. He was just kind of throwing that little stone thing.
mm.
But cool. So that's Town of Zaz. So this next one, this is just I kind of want us in the chat to kind of talk about Suikoden HD. So that came out. I'm gonna put a review up. Suikoden HD review, just so there's some footage playing while we're talking about this. This switch up. I like playing switch ups because they're cool. Switch up. Do you have a review? Okay, good. I like these guys, so we'll give them some
My
love.
favorite channel for game reviews is the Gaming Shelf, personally.
Good answer. Yes, I don't have a review. I probably could have had a review up, but now that I think the time has passed and nobody would care. But I know you haven't been playing this, but like, what's your history with Suikoden? Like, have you played 1 and 2? Do you want to play these remasters? Like, what's your history with the series?
I'm a very, very, very long time Suikoden fan. I played the original one on PS1, and then I was hooked from there. From that point on, I bought 2 on release day. I bought 3 on release day, 4, 5. I love the Suikoden series, and I've even read the books that the series is kind of like loosely based on. The
Oh, okay.
Chinese book, Bandits of Liangshan Marsh or Water Margin, and like I love the story. I love the concept. I love everything about these games. I am so sad that they just disappeared, and I think that one of the reasons for that is kind of like what we were talking about earlier about people buy the last game, right?
Mhm.
And Suikoden 4 was poorly received, and so Suikoden 5, which I personally view as a masterpiece, did not sell well. And so Konami just cut it, along with, their entire gaming arm. But sadly, Suikoden was a casualty of Konami. And I'm glad to see that they're bringing it back. I really hope that these games get the steam to bring back 3, 4, and 5, and hopefully, God willing, a Suikoden 6 one day. But I don't know if that's ever gonna happen.
Yeah. I think this is going to happen because I don't know, for anybody that missed, they did like a Suikoden stream last week, and they are doing a lot with Suikoden right now. So like obviously they're doing the HD, this HD remaster collection. Honestly, this borders on a remake to me because they have completely redone the backgrounds. This sounds stupid for anybody that didn't play the original games, but you can run diagonally now. Which is like, holy shit, diagonal running. But like, they have to go back in and like add those animations. That's like not a minuscule amount of work, right? They added so many more little like visual effects. They added like auto battle, speed up battles. There's like so much they added to these remasters. So I feel like they put a lot of love into these. They made it widescreen. They added new character portraits. So I feel like this was not just a a rush job, because at first I was like, why are they delaying these for so long? Like they announced it, and it took like 2 years from announce to finally release these. But now I see why. Like it's excellent. And anyway, that stream, they mentioned that they're doing an anime for Suikoden 2. There's a mobile game called Starleap, which I guess you can recruit the core 108 characters just by playing the game. And then the gacha is for like characters from 1, 2, and then I imagine later 3, 4, 5 if the mobile game does well. And the way they described it was like the HD remaster is step 1, and then step 2 is we want to get this out to a bigger audience with the anime and the mobile game. So I imagine if all these things do well, then I think the next step would be a 6. So because I look at the mobile game, I'm like, okay, if they make 6, that's what it's going to look like, because it's kind of got an HD 2D thing going on. So I would not be surprised if we get a 6 at some point.
If Suikoden 6 is in the works, I would be very happy to hear it. I honestly, though, I'm still reticent of anything that Konami makes in-house because they just haven't for so long. There's another game releasing this year that they're making in-house, isn't there?
The Metal Gear 3 remake?
No, I mean that I believe they are, but there was something that was on the RPG list of 2025 that we did a couple months
it was
ago.
What was it? I know what you're talking about now. It was like, hold on, give me a second. I'll find it.
It was something that actually looks really good, and being made in-house by Konami as a new IP seemed odd.
Eden Zero, that's it.
There it is.
Yeah, it's like an action RPG. It's from the same guy who did Fairy Tail, like kind of that same art style. Yeah. Thanks, Mad Kaiser. Eden Zero.
Right. Hopefully, I mean, like if they have decided to add games back into their repertoire instead of just doing pachinko machines, I would be very grateful, because the Konami of the late 90s and early 2000s made some of the best games of all time.
Oh,
Suikoden included.
Yeah, Suikoden, Castlevania, Metal Gear, like they were hitting on all cylinders. And then after Kojima left, you're right, they just were like, let's just stop making games. But now it seems like they're kind of trying to come back. Like last year, they did the Silent Hill 2 remake, which was excellent.
But that was outsourced, wasn't it?
That was Bloober Team.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're even like releasing games, like I agree, like they have their internal teams haven't been making literally anything. But the fact that they're even like trying to do anything is like cool. So this is we got a question here. I don't even know how to pronounce your name. Pagila Hucho. Oh my gosh. So for someone that hasn't played the older games, what makes Suikoden special? To me, I think the unique selling point is like you can recruit 108 characters. Like to me, that's what I think makes it special. Like typically the games are about some kind of rebellion, and you have this base and you're slowly going around the world recruiting these characters, and it's not always a party member. Sometimes it's like a chef or a guy like a blacksmith, something like that. And so you're this idea that you're slowly building up these bases, your base, and recruiting all these characters is really cool. But what do you think, Jack? Like what do you think makes Suikoden special? Like why should someone be excited for it?
I think one of the best things about the Suikoden games is that the story in all of them is always good, and I'm going to nerd out for just a second, so give me like 2 minutes here. So the base story that all of this is based on is an ancient Chinese novel that's essentially like, hey, the local government is insanely corrupt and tyrannical, but nobody can do anything about it because every time somebody steps up, then they just get killed, they get put down, or things get worse for everybody, right? So a small group of people who are just like, they decide we've had enough of this, and so they start to find other heroes like them, and it's based on the stars of destiny, that when this group of 108 people get together, then The government will be for the people. And that's the basic concept of all of these, is that there's something wrong in the government. There is some sort of rebellion that you have either wittingly or unwittingly become the leader of, and now you have to find the people who make this story possible. And as you go through that, you go through the different places, you go around the world, recruit people and all that stuff. But one of the coolest things from a gameplay perspective is that it gives you a very real and constant sense of progression. Because, like Taylor was just saying, when you have your base, then as you recruit more people, the base grows. As you recruit a chef or a blacksmith, your base now has a chef in it that you can get food from, or a blacksmith where you can upgrade your weapons. And you can recruit people who will be part of your party. You can recruit people who are just support members or whatever else. But every single person who you recruit has a personality, or they have a side story. Even if it's just like the homeless riverboat gambler who you have to play the dice game and beat him to recruit him. He's an important part of the story for this particular moment, or whatever else. Each one of the characters, their star of destiny comes together as one of the puzzle pieces that makes the whole thing actually work. And so, like, I love these games. I love the story. I love the way that they're designed and play. And just as a classic JRPG style, they do a really good job.
Oh yeah, and I played Suikoden 1 about 15 years ago now for the first time, and yeah, it holds up really well. And right now I'm currently playing Suikoden 2 for the first time with these remasters, and like, yeah, the remasters are like incredible, but then also like you're saying, that this rebellion, like, you get so many opportunities to hate the bad guy. Like, sometimes it's just like, haha, there's a big bad guy and we got to kill him, and you're like, I don't care, right? But in 2, he is such a dickhead that you're like, God, I want to kill this guy so bad.
Yeah, so like Luca Blight is actually a really good example of just nihilism at its best. Similar to like Kefka, where like we don't need a motivation like Sephiroth. We just believe in nothing, and destruction is the name of the day, because why not? What are you going to do about it? And it makes them like actually really compelling antagonists. But the B story in terms of antagonists in Suikoden 2 is where the real meat of it is. And I'm not even going to say names. I'm not going to ruin anything, because, oh my God, what an amazing journey Suikoden 2 is. And like the characters and the writing and how it comes together, the twists and turns, the surprises, I cannot wait to see what happens next, of especially Suikoden 2 is just unbeatable. And that's why like it's impossible to get a physical copy, because limited numbers, but also just everybody loves it. Nobody wants to sell their copy because it's superb.
Oh yeah, like I put out a quick like a short the other day talking about playing Suikoden and like trying to find a copy of Suikoden 2. And I was like, I think the prices have come down because of the remaster, but I remember Suikoden 2 physical copies were going for like $300.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Just because, like you said, it's so good, and the print run was so limited, and like nobody bought it. But yeah, I mean, and I gotta say, as someone that played Eiyuden Chronicle and then now is playing Suikoden 2, I just think Suikoden 2 is just a much better experience overall. Eiyuden Chronicle did so many annoying things, and like, but I feel like all their design choices were like purposeful. Like, I'm trying to think of some like weird stuff they did that like really annoyed the heck out of me.
Did they not let you run diagonally? Is that what it is, Taylor?
That was it. You couldn't run diagonally. I'm like, damn those guys. If only they let me run diagonally. No, but I mean, there was stuff like, and as I'm thinking about this in real time, they also have, it's in these old games, but it's like, no fast travel. You can't save on the world. I think that was it. There's no auto saving, or the save points were very, very limited. So, and then I'm trying to think, there was this one dungeon where you have to like press all these levers, and open these doors. It was just like a super annoying puzzle. I'm like, I F this, I give up. Like it just wasn't fun. But so far, I just feel like Suikoden 2 is just a much more seamless experience. Like the game gets out of its own way and just lets you have fun. And as someone that like I wanted to love Eden Chronicle, but I just got annoyed with it. So, which is weird because it's like literally the same team that made those old games, but I guess they just made some weird choices along the way. But did you play Eden Chronicle at all?
I haven't yet.
Or is that,
I haven't yet. It's
you mentioned that earlier. That's another
permanent
backlog.
top of the backlog that like I'm definitely gonna play it next. And like they're still releasing the DLC stories for it. I think just
that's right.
yesterday, one of either the second or third one dropped. And so I really, really genuinely want to play it. I can't wait, but also, like there's stuff to do and other things that I have to get done as well.
Life happens. Yep.
Life happens a lot.
It really does. I just got dropped another code for a game that I'm actually genuinely excited about, but it's just like, okay, well, Monster Hunter has to get put to the side for a week so I can beat this game. But
yeah.
Oh, woe is me.
yeah, right. Like, oh, sad story, right? I mean, like for the last week, my wife has been making fun of me for staying up late to do homework, and like, and it yeah, woe is me, right? So sad story.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I really hope that the Suikoden stuff takes off. The anime thing is an interesting choice because I'm not sure why they think that would like grab a new fan base. I remember that Final Fantasy 15 tried doing that. Do you remember like the anime backstories that they did before that? And like they tried doing that, and it was, I think some of us watched it. Like there are dozens of us, right? Like
yeah. It's really weird because like I feel like it's like a huge hit or miss because you look at something like Cyberpunk Edge Runners, and people freaking love that, and it boosted the sales of the game. And I guess the Witcher Netflix series also boosted the sales of the game. So like it could have a positive effect. And maybe that's their thought, like this cross media stuff boosts the sales, but it's got to be good. So that's the thing. Like if
it has
they
to be
can't
good, and it has to be on a platform that people are going to want to watch it on. So like if they just release it on YouTube, then no matter how good they make it, it's gonna feel freemium. Like, you know what I mean?
Totally. That's a good point.
If Edge Runners had released on YouTube instead of on Netflix, people would have been like, "Oh yeah, I'll get around to it. I'll add it to my watch later list."
Yeah, no, you're right. If it's on like a streaming platform, it feels more like a premium. Like, okay, we got to sit down and watch this. Like, they should put it out on Crunchyroll or one of those kinds of platforms. Like, I don't watch anime much, like at all. Like, I think to go on a quick little tangent, like the ridiculous rollout of the last season of Attack on Titan I was just like, this is so ridiculous. So it's like last season part 2, last season part 2. Like, no, really, this is the last one, I swear. And it's like, okay, like stop jerking me around. Like, just put the thing out or don't. Like, this is ridiculous. So I just can't be bothered to subscribe to Crunchyroll, but it's still huge. I mean, Sony bought it, combined it with Funimation, and it's like a megalithic thing now, I guess. So to me, that would make sense to put it there. But I agree, like just tossing it on YouTube, I feel like it would feel like they don't care about it. It's just like, here's the thing, you can watch it if you want to.
And I think that is the biggest trap for them to avoid is if it feels like they don't care about. Now, obviously, they've put the time and effort into these remasters to make it good.
Yeah.
But then if like right on the tail of that, or like, hey, right when this is releasing, they're also like, hey, by the way, big gacha game coming soon. Pachinko anyone? And like, I don't know, maybe the game ends up being excellent, or maybe it ends up being like Atelier Yumia, which right, or like, or any of the other, because like gacha games and live service games and like these things, they are transient by nature, but they're also obvious cash grabs by nature. And so unless they deliver like a genuine premium product that microtransactions are honestly purely optional, like something like a League of Legends or a Path of Exile or something like that, unless they deliver something on that level, it's gonna feel like they're just using nostalgia as a cash grab. So I hope that they avoid that trap and make sure that everything they release feels premium, feels top notch, and they don't just phone it in for money.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it, I don't know, but when I watched that stream, I really got a sense that these people cared, and they like are like genuinely putting their like heart and souls behind trying to revive Suikoden. Because, but yeah, it's hard to not look at a gacha game and not think, oh, it's just a cash grab and whatever. Because I know anytime I talk about a gacha game on the channel, people just hate it, and I get it. Like I understand that JRPG fans have been burned for so long. I remember even before gacha games that were like web browser games. Yeah. Like every time it's like, oh, Square's going to announce a new game this week. And we're like, oh, cool. And it's like, oh, it's like a Star Ocean browser game. And it's like, oh, cool. And like, and that kind of thing has been happening for a long time. So yeah, I think they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, where it's like, no, but you can get all the 108 characters just by playing the game. You don't have to do the gacha, I swear. And then, yeah, like Oz makes a good point here, right? He's like, I don't go to JRPGs for my gacha, especially if they shut down after a year, right? Like your Reslariana. I remember when the Sakura Wars PS4 game came out, they also did a Sakura Wars gacha game that got shut down within a year. They did a Mana gacha game. I think it was called Echoes of Mana. I forget, but that also shut down. So like, there's just so much competition in like the gacha space that like if it's not good, then just like forget it.
Even if it is good, like it has to be a premium game. Like that's the only thing. That's the only thing that works, is that it's a premium game that has gacha elements. And like I'm okay with gacha elements in games, especially if they're not cash shop stuff. So like Daybreak 2 has something like that in the endless dungeon thing, where at the end of it you have in-game resources that you then spend to buy like loot box stuff, and it gives you cosmetics or upgrades your skills, things like that. But you can't buy those pieces. You can't buy the stuff. It's not trying to get cash out of you. And so it feels like it's part of the gameplay for you to have those things. So those mechanics by themselves, totally fine when applied appropriately. But when it's an obvious cash grab, then I'm like, dude, I would rather you just be upfront and be honest and be like, hey, if you want to see this character in a swimsuit, $3, you get the cosmetic. Like seriously, right? Like,
yeah, it's fine.
If that's what you want to sell, then it's fine, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, Hoyo doesn't shut their games down after 1 year. Yeah, there's definitely a burned element to the gacha space of games that just get shut down and then everything is lost, right?
Yep. But it's funny that he mentions Hoyo, because like I feel like Hoyoverse has like gotten away with it, because like if you play it, it plays like a AAA $70 game, but it's got the like business model of like a mobile gacha game. Because like I remember playing Genshin Impact, I'm like, this game is free. I could play this game forever and not pay $1, like literally. And they're gonna just keep making those games. Like they got Honkai Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did another one. But like, yeah, they've got it figured out.
So that's actually a really good example of the premium product. You make the premium product, and then it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I'm honest. I have to be totally honest. I'm really surprised more companies haven't tried to copy what Hoyoverse is doing. Like, imagine if there was a like an open world Final Fantasy game that had the production value of a Final Fantasy game, but it had the business model of like a Hoyoverse game where it's just like, you're a warrior of light, and they make up some dumb reason for you to be able to summon Final Fantasy characters from other worlds, and maybe like, okay, I got my party of Cloud and Yuna and Bart's or whatever, and like we're just running around killing guys. Like people would be all over that if it was premium, right? Not just some dumb little gotcha mobile thing that the production value is low. Like it's got to have some money behind it, and I'm shocked no one's done that. Like not a soul has tried to copy them.
I mean, I don't know. Like when we were doing the JRPGs for the year, it felt like about half of those games on the list were
Okay, that's true.
Hoyoverse knockoffs, and so like it might have, because when did Genshin land? 2020.
Yeah, somewhere around there, 2019, 2020, yeah, something like
so
that.
Genshin Impact had the pandemic at its back, just like all the wind in your sails. Everybody's staying home, just playing Genshin Impact all day long, and so they had that huge boost, and it's carried them forward. Plus, they make a genuinely good product, and so like if people are going to play the premium game, there you go.
Yeah, and then actually that's not totally like I definitely fib that a little bit. Like Oz said, there's Wuthering Waves, there's those games that are, there's like Everness to Neverness, I think was one, and then there's like Anaka or Akana or something like that. There were a couple, like you said, that were in that roundup video for JRPGs this year, and so there's those. But I guess what I meant was I'm surprised people haven't taken existing popular franchises and tried to do that. Like I'm surprised, because like you want to talk about a game that's like prime for this would be Assassin's Creed. Like just make like the world of Assassin's Creed, and then your gacha is all the different characters from all the different games. Or like, okay, our next map update, we're traveling to Korea, I don't know, right? And then they make up a new character for Korea, or they just make up random characters. Like it doesn't matter. But the whole game is just this open world. You're constantly trying to assassinate people or do whatever. And I feel like that would make way more money than like a core Assassin's Creed game, or like I said, with Final Fantasy, or pick a series. I'm just surprised that like they haven't tried to do that with existing franchises.
That's so interestingly, there's a lot of stuff like that in Final Fantasy 14. And I know that you said that you didn't ever get too far into it, but they do a lot of crossover stuff. Like there's a whole series of raids that are like, this is Final Fantasy 12. You go to Rabanastre and you meet a lot of the characters there, and you talk to Ramza, and you talk to some of the I can't remember the crocodile guy's name from Final Fantasy 12, and they all play a big part in this. And then they also have the crossover with Nier, and they bring a lot of these things in there. Or they'll have a Final Fantasy 10 crossover, or Final Fantasy 15 crossover, and you can win the regalia at the gold saucer. They do a lot of that stuff on that longer live service model, but it is somewhat locked in that, like, it's an MMO rather than a live service jump straight into it type game. And I imagine that doing it really, really well though is hard.
It must be, because or expensive, because I've heard that it took a lot of money to make Genshin Impact. So I imagine that it's just like, okay, probably much more than like a typical AAA game, because you have to have all the live aspects kind of lined up behind it. So yeah, hard and expensive. So it's like, okay, do we really want to blow like $500 million making this game that may or may not make its money back? Like, that's
better that than Concord.
Oh my God. God.
Yeah.
Good old Concord.
Yeah. And
cool.
I mean, like there are a lot of those live service failures, right? Because for every one that is just a home run, knock it out of the park, for every Genshin, there's your Suicide Squad and your Redfall and your Concord and even your Overwatch 2, right? Which like people are like, wow, this is objectively a far worse product than Overwatch 1 was. And like, I don't know. I think it's really hard to deliver that premium product on a freemium basis.
Yeah.
And honestly, it might just be super hard to deliver a really good live service product.
Yeah, no, clearly, because like look at all the bombs Sony had and all the other bombs that everyone else has had. So that's definitely hard because I remember when mobile games came out, there was like very little competition, so it was just like free money. But now everyone's doing it and the market's saturated. I like we were saying earlier, I mean, like literally look what you like, we can't even find the time to play the games we want to play, let alone trying to. Can you imagine like if you only play these live service style games and like God, it's got to be really hard to pull people away, like Fortnite and these like other like Genshin. It's got to be hard to pull people away from them when they're so entrenched and they've put in so much time. The game that pulls them away has just got to be so different and so good. And yeah, it's and even the ones
Hoyoverse planned that out, and they were like, "Listen, what do you want? You wanna do like a kind of Pokemon style Monster Hunter thing? Like, here's this. You want to do like an RPG style game? You want to do the beat 'em up style here, and like you can have all of them." And it's clear that their game plan is not to make their money back on day one. Their game plan is we want people to start playing this game saying the same thing that you said, which is I could play this game forever and never spend a dollar. And that's awesome, especially for the people who don't have money to spend on games. Because what's going to happen is now all the money they spend on games is going to go to you. Right. And they might not have a lot, but if everybody who plays it spends, I don't know, whatever you get for your birthday and Christmas, if you're like, I want Genshin dollars or whatever the currency is, then like they just get all your money.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, because eventually, like, you know what? I'll buy the battle pass. You know what? I'll drop some money on gacha spins. I really want this character, and like that's the other thing I got to hand it to Hoyoverse. They have like the best character designers in the world. Like, I'm constantly surprised at how good their new characters are, and they're like, oh my god, that new waifu is so hot. I gotta have her. Like, it's amazing how they manage to constantly churn out new ones that are unique and like incredible. It like blows me away. So we're kind of getting to the last part, but we got people send in a few questions, and if you've got questions, toss them in the chat. We'll throw them up. But yesterday I put out a post on my community tab, so I'm going to continue to do that every week. So if you want to have your questions read live, keep an eye out for those. And then I put out a post on Discord and Twitter as well. So these are just a few of the questions that popped up. But again, if you guys have some good ones, we'll read them live as well. But this one was really interesting. So this was from Retro PNW on Twitter. And he says, with the release of the Suikoden collection and the upcoming Lunar collection, what would be your dream franchise collection that you would love to see? And what kind of special features or updates would make it perfect? So I have an answer. Do you have one like ready to go, or do you need a second to think about it?
I don't have one that I would love to have. What I really want is I want the games that were made before to be made available so that we can buy them now. And even with things like the PS Plus Premium, where like you can go back and play some old PS3 games and PS2 games, that's nice. But the fact that I cannot buy Breath of Fire and go back and play that, or the fact that I can't buy Shadow Hearts and I can't play that game, right? Like, to me, it's basically unacceptable. In a world where everything is digital, that's what I want. Is I want the ability to buy and play the games, even if it's just running on like middling emulation on the systems. They don't need to be remasters or remakes, but just to be able to play the games that have released already, I really think should be one of the biggest projects that we have. So like basically a Project Gutenberg but instead of books, of games and of game preservation. And Nintendo is awful about that, about game preservation and locking out access. It's infuriating. Make the games available. Let people buy them.
Oh my God. What they did with the Mario 3D collection was like, I've never seen something so insane. They like limited the purchase digitally. I'm like, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, nah, we don't want your money. We're good. Like literally they're hurting themselves. It's so weird.
Nintendo is super anti-consumer.
It's bizarre. But I mean, for me, if I were to have any collection, it would be a tactics collection, like Final Fantasy Tactics collection. I mean, I would honestly just want it for OG Final Fantasy Tactics, but I've never played the Advanced games, and I hear Advanced 2 is really good. I heard Advanced 1 is annoying because it's got some weird stuff where like there's these laws and you're like limited with what you can do in certain battles. But I heard they kind of went back with Advanced 2. Tactics is like one of my all-time favorite games, and it's like insane that like of all the games that Square has remastered, like they've remastered every Saga game, they've remastered like Crystal Chronicles, and they haven't remastered Final Fantasy Tactics yet, which is like, I can't believe that. So I want that, and it was in the NVIDIA leaks. Supposedly it's still coming, maybe next year, maybe this year, I don't know. But yeah, Tactics, I would love them, like all of them in one collection.
So I was today years old when I learned that Tactics Advanced is not just Final Fantasy Tactics, but released on Game Boy Advance. Like,
oh yeah, they're new games. Yeah,
I didn't know that it was a different game, and that actually is a really good argument for why they should keep the numbers so that people know, hey, this is a different game. It's not just a re-release on a different system, because that's what I assumed that it was.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah, Square Enix is pretty notorious for terrible naming conventions with their games. But yeah, those would be my choices. Yeah, so good stuff.
Pixel Remaster sold 5 million copies. Yeah,
wow,
and so
that's a lot.
That goes to what I was just saying about like there is a thirst for people to be able to buy old games. And even if you never end up playing them, or even if you say like, I'm going to buy the Pixel Remaster collection, but I've already played 4, 5, and 6. So I'm just going to play 1, 2, and 3 because I want to know, like I want to see, I want to experience them. And you'll be sad about it because they're not good. But you'll have them, right? You'll buy them.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
there is a capitalist argument to just like release the old things. Let us have them. It doesn't cost you much in storage space to make them available.
Yep.
Make it a thing.
Yeah, 100%. Let's see. So next question is kind of a joke, but I just want to read it. So Israel on Discord says, Ephemeral Fantasia, a hidden gem. Are you familiar with what Ephemeral Fantasia is?
I am familiar with it. And and hot take, no, it's not.
So I actually played this for the first time very recently because I'm kind of going through the worst PS2 JRPGs for an upcoming video. And sometimes you're just like, okay, people were not kind to this game because maybe there was another game that came out at the same time. And by comparison, it's not great, but on its own and with hindsight, it's actually not that bad. But this game is genuinely terrible. Like, there's this part in the game. So the premise of this game is that you're a traveling guitar player and you've been summoned to this island to play guitar for this king's wedding. And when you get there, he's like, oh, can you play a little song for me? And I'm like, okay, cool. And the mini game just starts and the game doesn't tell you how to play it. And I'm just like, I literally missed every single chord. And then after the king was like, wow, amazing. And I'm like, what just happened? And like the controls are bizarre. Like they try to make it like an actual guitar, like credit to them. Like the way it works is like you hold down buttons on the controller and then you hold and then you press like I think one of the trigger buttons to like strum the guitar. You would think it's just like, okay, square, triangle, square, square, triangle. But it's like, no, you got to hold square and then strum it, which is like needlessly complicated, but in Japan, it came with a guitar peripheral that it never came with in America. So, but that aside, the game, it doesn't like, the map is so terrible. Like the camera angle is like almost top down. So when you're trying to navigate the map, it's like, where am I going? What am I supposed to do? What is anything? And like the combat's just not good. And then on top of all of this, I couldn't believe it when I got to this part, but the game loops. It's like Majora's Mask. So like something bad happens on the 5th day and then the game starts over. And so you have to like kind of do these little micro decisions to get the good ending, and the game is just constantly starting over. So not only is the game bad, but then the game makes you play the bad game over and over and over again.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's something special, I gotta tell you. Speaking of Konami.
Time loop that's a really difficult thing to pull off. Like Majora's Mask can do it because you have all the talent and depth of the Zelda team behind you. Prey Moon Crash managed to pull it off really well. Far better than Deathloop or like other things. Like time loop games. Ooh, Outer Wilds. Did you ever play Outer Wilds?
No, I heard that game's pretty good though.
Is
that the game where you're like building a rocket ship?
No.
Okay, I'm thinking of something else then.
But you are out in space. You're using a rocket ship out in space. But if you play the game, don't look up any information about it, and don't treat it like a game. Just treat it like I'm serious. Like, because I really didn't enjoy it whenever I first played it, because I was trying to like beat it, trying to win, but it's not that. If you treat it like a sandbox, like literally like a sandbox, like I wonder what I can do, I wonder what I can find, I wonder what will happen, then it becomes super enjoyable. But if you're trying to win or trying to beat it, then it is an exercise in frustration for sure. But it's a really rewarding and fun game, and not too taxing on your time. I think that if you go through it totally blind, maybe 15 to 20 hours.
Okay.
Right. It's definitely a one of a kind game, but it's not a JRPG, so irrelevant to this channel.
Yeah, but good to know. I mean, I play. There's actually quite a few other genres that I play outside of JRPGs, and I'm sure people too. It's like it's not the only thing. So this one, I wanted to read it just because they asked. I'm not super familiar with this game, but I don't even know how to say this. Ati Sensei 5809 on YouTube said, "Do games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Tag Force count as RPGs?" I actually don't know what that game is. I looked it up. It seems like it's Yu-Gi-Oh! But like you're a character and you like walk around a world, but it's mostly just playing the card game. So there's no like combat, but there's like a story, and you're playing like you win battles and you get money, and then you can buy more cards. And so I don't know. Would you count something like that as an RPG?
I mean, there's a progression system. You're walking around town, I guess, talking to people. You are playing a character in a specific role, and it's made by a Japanese company. Like, yeah, I also don't know the game, but why not? Right?
Yeah, why not?
There's no need to gatekeep on things like game tags and stuff like that. Just if a game is good, then the game is good.
Exactly.
And if it's not, then it's a Sony live service game.
Exactly. Cool. Well, that about does it for the show. Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any last little comments, we can answer. But yeah, I'm excited. Next week, let's see. Let me look at the release schedule. I believe next week we have a couple big releases. So next week, on the 20th, we have Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition drops on Nintendo Switch, and then the very next day on the 21st, Atelier Yumia drops on everything. So I'm probably gonna pick up Yumia. It sounds like, from what I'm hearing behind the scenes, it's pretty good. But we'll see. I'm so curious what the reviews are gonna be. But yeah, what I'm trying to think how I want to ask you something about that, but I'm trying to be very careful. Yeah, we'll wait till next week, because then we can just go all in and we can answer everybody's questions.
Yeah.
But as we sign off, any last words, any parting comments to the lovely audience?
No, I've really enjoyed it, and for those of you who joined us live and adding in your comments, and those of you who submitted through the Discord, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's a ton of fun. Hopefully you can tell I am very passionate about this. Taylor's very passionate about this. We love talking about games. We love playing games, and we love having these discussions. So yeah, keep on joining in, keep on tuning in, joining us live, leaving the comments. We love all of them, and submitting your questions so that we can discuss even more.
Yeah, no, and this will be the time. Like we'll do it. I guess it would be like 5 or 6 p.m. Thursday night, but for us it's Friday morning. So we're gonna keep it same time every week. We'll bring up the news. If a game came out that we had a chance to review or play, we'll talk about it, and we can answer any questions that anybody has. But yeah, this was super fun. I was super excited to have you on. We had kind of talked about doing something like this for a long time, and I was kind of thinking about this, and I'm like, oh, this might be the way to do it. So awesome to have you on. Glad that everybody tuned in. Definitely leave your feedback. I mean, this was the episode 1 dry run pilot episode, whatever you want to call it. If there's something you want to get added or changed or adjusted, let us know. We're happy to evolve it as time goes on. And keep an eye out. We might bring out other guests as the weeks go on, like other YouTubers or maybe even developers. Like I'm talking to a lot of mostly indie developers, so they may be able to come on if it makes sense. So, but yeah, appreciate everyone tuning in live. And yeah, that'll be it for today. We'll see you guys next week, and keep an eye out for some cool upcoming reviews. So anyways, we'll see you next time, guys.